We're really excited to have you here today for our Composting 101 workshop. We have some stations set up, and we would love for people to come by and ask questions and get more information about composting.
Well, the different tables, we have Vermiculture over here, we have Open Pile, and then we have this Lumi machine that basically turns things into compost.
I've always liked to garden, and I don't really remember how I learned about it, but I went down the wormhole and discovered it was easy, it was practical, economical, helps me avoid putting food into the landfill, and my plants are very, very happy. I do. I used to have this system. This is a 5-tiered system. You start with just one of the buckets, put in bedding, you put in the worms, and you feed them. You then put a second, you can see that the bins have holes in them. You put the second bin in, and you continue the process of bedding and food, and the worms will, on their own, migrate up through the holes, leaving the castings, which is the gold that we go for, on the bottom. And you keep doing that until it fills, and you empty out the castings, and you just keep recycling the trays. I did this up until very recently, but then I learned about using the bin. The bin, I have bedding. This is just a brick of coir, C-O-I-R. It's a coconut fiber. It's natural. It's really good at retaining moisture, and it makes a great bedding. The worms will eat the bedding. Newspaper, shredded newspaper, leaves from the garden. It's been in my garden shed, but during the winter months, I keep it in the basement. They do better between 50 and 90 degrees. If it gets too cold or too hot, they slow way down. They're really fascinating, actually. They're hermaphroditic. They will, as long as there's food, they will keep reproducing. I can put in just about anything from the kitchen. I avoid things that are overly spicy. They don't seem to like that. And I avoid citrus peels because they affect the pH of the closed system. In an outdoors, you can put them in an outdoor space and they will not have a problem with it. But in here, because it's so contained. Well, it does take a little bit of time in figuring out, but they eat the bedding. You'll start to see, after they've been in here for this size especially, I think it's a couple of months, I'll stop feeding them, and they'll let them go for a couple of weeks, and then they'll continue to just eat the bedding. And then it's a slower process of, you take it out, and you put a bright light on it. And they will crawl in. So you just take off the top layer, leave it for a couple hours, come and take the next top layer off, and eventually you end up with a ball of worms that you put back into a whole new situation.
All over again.
And then by doing that, we get the liquid. Not liquid. This is the gold. This is the castings that it's all from the worms, and it's just teeming with beneficial bacteria. And that, I will put this when I'm planting, I'll put some of this in the hole, but you can see it's not a huge amount, whereas like when you get compost from your pile, I've got buckets of that. This is so small so that I make tea out of it, so that I can then spread it around more plants. And like every 2 weeks, especially my vegetables, I will give them more of this to drink. It not only helps to feed them and make them healthy, it helps, they've done studies where it prevents disease, and they put tomato plants in one row of tomato plants. They then put a known pathogen in, and they had a control group that did not get the worm tea, and the worm tea plants were thriving and the other ones died. So many ways that they're beneficial. They're really quiet house guests. This is it. They won't leave the bin. If they leave the bin, they die. They don't have lungs. They need to be in a moist environment in order to have respiration. And they're actually pretty easy and cool.
Right.